Captain, we have them! We've established Transporter Lock, the Star Trek podcast. Join Ken and crew each week as they explore strange new episodes, seek out new plots and new characters, and boldly go where no podcast has gone before.
Hello and welcome to Transporter Lock episode number 160 for March 2026.
I'm your co-host, Cadet Staci Lee.
And I'm your co-host, Chief Engineer Ken Gagney. Hello, Staci.
Hi, Ken.
Welcome to the end of The Path Not Taken, the season finale of Starfleet Academy.
Oh, here we are.
Here we are. It's been so much fun.
It has. It's been really eye-opening for me. I've gotten a lot of education about Star Trek that I didn't have before. And it's been a real pleasure with chatting with you about this.
Education in the sense that I was very didactic and mansplaining.
Not so much that, but now that you mention it.
Hey. So are you saying education just from having been exposed to Star Trek or going back? Like we watched 2 episodes of Voyager. We watched Real Life and one other episode I can't think of at the moment, but
well, the one where it was in the museum.
That's right. We watched that even before Starfleet Academy aired, just in case it became relevant, which it did not.
No, but Real Life did, which I was surprised by. And more of the education in terms of the Star Trek universe itself, how different things work. You know, as you and I have talked about before, when I was young and watching Star Trek The Next Generation with Pops, with my dad, we would be watching different things, but I was so young then that I don't remember a lot of different things. And I do remember some of the pop culture references and some of the new reboots and of the movies and different things like that. But being able to really get immersed in the Star Trek universe and to have it introduced to me in this kind of fashion has been really helpful for me and also really educational.
Well, great. I'm glad you had a fun time watching these cadets make their way through their first year of Starfleet Academy in the 32nd century.
Yes, 32nd century and the same level of drama.
I know, right? A lot of people compare this show to Dawson's Creek, which is not a show I grew up with, but are you familiar with it?
Oh, yeah. I had mentioned this before, where it did seem like a lot of the teenage antics, like underage drinking and all these different dramatic, gossiping sort of relationships intertwine. And it did feel very Dawson's Creek for me. Rest in peace, James Van Der Beek. But looking at it when it comes to the different dynamics that teens, young adults have, it does feel very similar. And also the trials that young adults have to go through, parents who are absent or who are on the run from the law and trying to find parental figures and other people in mentors and in teachers and trying to navigate a world that they were thrown into without really any kind of protection or set up before that. I think it makes a big difference.
I would like to think that humanity has evolved in the next 1,000 years, that we don't have that drama, but I know that the burn also set all of society back many generations in their development.
Yeah. And I mean, look at how records are kept from 1,000 years ago to now. Drama is going to continue, and people are always going to be really interested in learning about each other's lives, and whether they know it or not. Mm-hmm. So being able to have that discussion, I think, is still relevant.
Yeah. Shall we have a discussion about the relevancy of the last 2 episodes of the season?
Yeah.
So we start with season 1, episode 9, 300th night. It is the 300th night of the first year of Starfleet Academy. Everybody's having a celebration. And we find out what it was that was stolen from that star base in a previous episode. It is Omega 47. Now, both words I just said have a history in Star Trek. Are you familiar with them?
No, I have a history with understanding what Omega is in terms of the meaning of that symbol itself, but not necessarily Omega and not 47.
Omega is a particle that was introduced in Star Trek Voyager. We probably should have gone back and watched that episode. Basically, there is the Prime Directive that Starfleet adheres to regarding non-interference with non-warp cultures and non-Federation cultures. But the Omega Directive supersedes that. If there is any detection of the Omega particle, it is to be destroyed at any and all costs because it is so incredibly dangerous. Like even the Borg were scared of the Omega particle. So to find out that Starfleet was actively researching and developing this potentially as a weapon, in some cases you could say it just shows how much Starfleet has fallen from its ideals as a result of the burn. They became much more uh, territorial, much more defensive. Uh, there is an argument made in the next episode that this was being developed as an energy source, and believe that what you will, but most energy sources can be weapons. And so they probably foresaw the potential for abuse and proceeded anyway.
Yeah, and the thought that I had was of all the places that Omega 47 could have been developed, everybody left that place when cadets were in trouble in the last couple of episodes. Like why wasn't it better protected? And that has just stuck to me. Why was it, if Omega 47 was such a big deal, which it was, then why wasn't it better protected? Why wasn't it protected by layers upon layers of military defense if Starfleet itself had become so much more defensive? But then again, we wouldn't have this storyline. That's what it would cause. So let's go with it.
Yeah. Well, maybe it was security through obscurity, because if you put up a lot of barriers around a starbase, you're basically advertising that there's something there worth stealing.
That's very true. I mean, when World War II was going on, I know that here in Western North Carolina, a lot of the Declaration of Independence and a lot of the other documents and art that was really integral to the creation of the United States was housed in the Biltmore Estate. And so nobody knew it was there, but it was with its own kind of fortress, but nobody really knew about it. So that obscurity. So just some trivia for the next time that we have that occasion to play when you come back to Northwest North Carolina.
But they didn't do a very good job of hiding it, because now we all know that it was there.
Well, now we do, but we didn't back then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we just have to keep that information out of the hands of time travelers.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. And as for 47, that number occurs in Star Trek more frequently than is coincidental.
Okay.
It is intentional, starting in season 4 of TNG and continuing through Star Trek Voyager, thanks to scriptwriter Joe Menosky, who, when he was in college, belonged to the 47 Society. And so he just started including that number in all his scripts, and it has become a recurring gag ever since.
Okay.
For those of you who are familiar with the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, 47 is 42 adjusted for inflation.
Mm-hmm. Which 42 is the answer to life, and that's how old I am. So that's how I consider myself to be a part of this.
Are you also the universe and everything?
Of course.
Of
Thanks
course.
for all the fish.
Yeah. So we find out that Omega 47 is out there, and that Noose Braka has just randomly detonated one in an unpopulated sector of space, which immediately brought to mind to me Star Trek Into Darkness, which I think for both of us, that was the last Star Trek movie we saw with our dads.
Yeah, it was. And so yeah, having that kind of example, it's very reminiscent. It's like, oh, I've literally seen this movie before, but also I've seen what happens with this. And then having the experience of those memories of our respective dads being able to have that relationship and see where these similar things that have happened in history are repeating themselves, partly as an homage to the previous Star Trek series, as well as the I know we've talked about a couple of times where when presented with the same set of variables between two characters, the decisions can be very different. So this is kind of how I see this as well, as Nus is doing his own thing with a similar instance as what we've seen in Into Darkness and even before that.
Except that Starfleet responded the same way both times, because when Khan set off a bomb, all the admirals called an emergency session, which put them into one place, which made them an easier target, which is exactly what Starfleet did here by bringing in all their starships to be defensive and thus in one place.
Yeah, they did, but the Athena was outside of that space. It didn't intend to be outside of that space, but it was, which I think was the one change that changed the result. So in Into Darkness, everybody got together. They were all, meeting in this one place, and of course, they were all sitting ducks. But in this particular series, the variable that was changed was that there was this one lonely little starship that was outside of the range, and that made all the difference with being able to, as we're going to discuss, being able to fight back against news.
Mm-hmm. Before we get there, though, there are some other developments, such as Caleb trying a code he hadn't tried in 2 years and finding out that his inbox was full of messages from his mom.
Oh, yep. I mean, you really got to check your messages, Caleb.
Yeah.
And Sam is the one who brought this. And I really like how she put this. She was like, think like a 6-year-old. Think like you did when you were separated from your mom. And he was like, well, we use this old code. And she said, well, do it again, So yet again, Sam saves the world. Just saying.
I was disappointed by this scene, not because of Sam, but just because of Caleb's lack of ingenuity to solve this problem on his own. I mean, this means that he had an inbox full of messages from his mom from even before the season premiere, in which he hijacked that Federation shuttle and tried to hack into their databases. I mean, he didn't have to go through any of that if he had just checked his messages. He wouldn't be in Starfleet. He wouldn't have met Ake again. This whole thing could have been avoided if he had just tried this code. And also, if you're running a password hacking program, it's going to try every single combination and permutation of alphanumeric characters there is. And it's going to start with what's called a dictionary attack, which is just trying every word that's in the dictionary. So if Caleb was trying all these high-level complex codes, why did it take him manually inputting like a 7-letter word to finally solve it? It's just a TV show, and I should really just relax.
A little bit. But
Okay.
the other part of it is that, I think that this really does demonstrate how Caleb is a genius, but that doesn't mean that he is wise. He has this textbook, as you said, he has this textbook genius level intelligence, but that ingenuity, which comes from genius, what is limited. So his young adult brain is getting in his own way, in my mind. It's still plastic. And when it comes to developmental psychology, it makes sense to me that he would just be like, oh, like this just completely left my head because I'm overthinking it so much that it actually misses the point.
The reason I get so caught up in the details is because I love the show so much.
I understand. Yes. Yeah.
And the details can be very exciting. Like, just very briefly, we saw in the Turbo Lift a Kelpian, an alien race that was first seen in Star Trek Discovery, and a Kelpian was one of the main characters on Star Trek Discovery.
I remember when we were watching this, and you turned to me and you goes, "That's a Kelpian," and I kind of look at you and I go, "I don't know what that is." So yeah, I really do appreciate your attention to detail on this, because I've learned, again, going back to that education, I've learned so much more about Star Trek universe, about the connections, like what you were just talking about with Omega 47. These are connections I wouldn't be making on my own.
What was exciting for me about this was at the beginning of Star Trek Discovery, Kelpians were not a spacefaring race. So they were, restricted by the Prime Directive of even being interfered with. And then one of the Kelpians was on the ship that jumped from the past to the future with Tig Notaro and Mary Wiseman.
Mm-hmm.
And when he got to the future, 1,000 years in the future, he was shocked to find out that the Kelpians had joined the Federation. That was not something that he expected when he first left that planet 1,000 years earlier. So to actually to have that reinforced visually by seeing one of them at Starfleet Academy was very exciting.
Yeah, I could see why.
Yeah. So Caleb decides to run off and find his mom. He decides not to tell Ake. He does have this awkward farewell with Tarima, where he just goes up to her in the hallway and says, "Your music," and she's just standing there taking this weird compliment and not wondering, what does that mean? What are you doing? Are you going somewhere? Are you doing something I'm going to regret?
Yeah, and that lack of foresight into like, why is he doing this way? And I think that this also, one other detail that I'd like to bring into this conversation is that Jaden is wanting a family and he invites Caleb into it. And we're going to see later on what Caleb does with it in self-defense or, self-sabotage, however you want to describe it. But he won't partake in the whatever they're drinking. And then so he refuses to be part of Jaden's family. And then he goes to Tarima and says, your music, but he's not explaining like, so this means that I'm cutting off all ties with everybody and going to go find my mom. Like these are big hints to me that he's made a decision to cut himself off from Starfleet, from his friends, from the people that he cares about. Doesn't tell Ake what's going on. He's isolating himself again.
Yeah, I forgot that was actually how the episode opened. Even before he found out about his mom, he declined the ceremony, the Klingon ceremony. And we've seen so much growth from him in the past season about him becoming part of a team, part of a family, but he's still unwilling to formalize it. He still sees himself as that lone wolf. And once he finds out that Mama Wolf is out there, he really does make a one-person run for it. He tries to hijack that shuttle, which security should stop that from happening in the first place. But not only does he hijack it, but almost all his friends somehow end up on the ship with him, Sam, Genesis, and Darum.
Yeah. Darum is drunk off that Klingon the Klingon drink. And yeah, how do all of them end up on this? And then of course Genesis, they kind of end up kidnapping her because she's the one who doesn't want them to go. She's the one that was put in charge of securing the shuttles, but they took her anyway. And you get to see this other side of Sam, this, the new development of this new Sam that I didn't see before she had to go to Cask and get essentially rebooted and raised by the Doctor.
Yeah, what do you think of this new Sam?
The last Sam was amazing. But this Sam is amazing as well. But she has this sort of, in my mind, she has this sort of chip on her shoulder where there's something that's really bothering her and it kind of comes out sideways, but you don't really know what it is until later on in this episode. And then you find out, oh, this is why she has this kind of curt attitude on occasion.
Yeah, she seems to resent her old self, which it's interesting that she wound up in the same spot anyway. Like she came back to Starfleet Academy, even though she's essentially a whole new person who just remembers her past life as if she didn't live it, as if it was somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she still chose the same path, but she's not the same person.
Yeah, and this comes across in some ways as much more confident, much more assertive, which, again, there was nothing wrong with the old Sam from our perspective, but I think this Sam is trying to distance herself from that old Sam in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, she even says that she's going to apply to get her own room next year, and Genesis is really hurt by that. She's really struck with why would she want to do that? And Sam even says it's not personal. It's just something that I feel that I need to do. And so Sam is trying to respect her own. We saw Sam before Cask trying to pull people in, trying to create this community, trying to depend on other people. And since she came back from Cask, this new Sam is just like Caleb, sort of pushing people away a little bit.
I assume you had roommates when you were in college, or did you live off campus?
My college journey was a little non-traditional, but I did have roommates at different points in time. And my apologies to those roommates because I was a very different person back then. And I also had a chip on my shoulder because I didn't understand the dynamics that I needed to embrace to become a better roommate. But then again, I had some really awesome roommates and we got along really great. So I think, it's that old, there's the old saying of like, friends don't always make the best roommates. Also, friends don't always make the best business partners. So looking at what are the limitations between roommates and friends, I think that Sam is trying to figure that out. What about yourself? How did you go through having roommates?
Well, if I had asked for my own room, it's not because it's something I would need to do for myself. It's because I hated my roommates.
That's
So,
fair.
yeah. So I had roommates all 4 years of undergraduate, and my freshman year, as I recall it now, looking back, I thought was great. We got along well.
Hmm.
Sophomore and junior year, I had 4 roommates each year,
Hmm.
and one of them each year, and a different person each year, would just not get along at all.
Hmm.
Senior year, my roommate and I started off great, but then they invited somebody else to live with us against my consent, and that person and I didn't get along. So,
Hmm.
and then finally after that, I've lived on my own pretty much ever since, which has been really nice because I can let the dirty dishes pile up and then tackle them all at once without somebody complaining.
That was something that I would have never found out about myself until this is the first time I'm living by myself when for the past couple of years. So, mid 40s, letting dirty dishes pile up in the sink, it's glorious.
And there are people listening to this podcast who are just cringing, and we probably just lost some subscribers too.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm putting them in the dishwasher, I swear. So
yeah.
hopefully, yeah, they're going to get clean.
Yeah, we're not attracting pests. There's no mold or fungus. It's just we're waiting maybe just waiting overnight, and it's not like we're scrounging because we're running out of dishes.
Yeah, and for those who are really concerned because they may know I have pets, I do have a little grate that I put on top of the sink so the cat doesn't get into it. So everything is safe.
So I don't know if these are the issues that cause Sam to want to be her own roommate, but
she doesn't eat, so that's dirty dishes probably isn't a thing for her.
That's true. She didn't partake of Jaden's drink, but only for biological reasons or holographic.
Yeah.
All right. So they kidnap this shuttle, they hijack it, they leave behind Tarima and Jaden, which is fine. Whatever.
Whatever.
Yep. And they go down to the planet. They go through a transwarp conduit first, and they end up at the planet after some turbulence where the last message from Kayla's mom was sent. And they don't do a very methodical search of the surface. They just start kind of walking around the city, hoping to bump into her.
Yeah, that right there, I was like, okay, well, the transwarp conduit was very that was convenient because otherwise it would have taken them 30 years to get there.
Oh, but I don't know about 30 years, but a couple of days at least.
Yeah. But looking at the let's just go to this space and start walking around. It was very reminiscent of Star Wars for me, where it's like we're just kind of wandering around so you can get a sense of the kind of conditions that Caleb's mom has had to survive in. It's been kind of like Andor style situation. And when they're walking around looking at like, would his mom even look the same? She doesn't. She's got a killer haircut. Like, I wouldn't recognize her if I just saw her, especially because she had the covering over her face. So yeah, I don't know what they thought was going to help them find his mom.
What Caleb should have done was walk around with a creepy little teddy bear.
That would have scared everybody off, I think. Yeah. Now, I mean, honestly, if he would have sent her a message through that same portal that was encrypted, then maybe he would have been like, hey, why don't we meet at, this market over here where they sell some souvenirs and we'll get together there. I don't know.
I'll be the guy holding the pink rose or whatever.
Oh, yeah. That's not creepy at all. Like the bear.
Did you see the movie Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse?
No, but it's on my watch list.
I highly recommend it. And there's a scene in there that was kind of like this, where Caleb and his mom do finally find each other, and it takes them a moment to recognize each other because they're in disguise. But once they do, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're here! Hi!" And we also saw back at Starfleet Academy, Admiral Vance talking to Ake about what to do, and Ake was like, "We are going to stay here in defense of Beta Z as ordered." Admiral Vance is like, "Don't give me the bull. I know you too well. That's not what you're going to do."
Yeah.
But he also basically says, "Don't make me give you an order that you won't follow." And
Yeah.
I really appreciated that Vance was somebody who was willing to bend the rules and do the right thing, even if it wasn't what was being ordered by the rest of Starfleet.
And plus his use of plausible and deniability, spot on.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always liked him. When he first showed up in Star Trek lore, he came across as what we call a badmiral.
I think that's pretty self-explanatory what a badmiral is.
Yeah, I wasn't going to explain it, but I just will say that there have been enough badmirals in Star Trek history that they have their own name.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I wonder what, because Genesis's dad is an admiral, isn't he?
Well, he's a dadmiral.
Oh, a dadmiral. Yeah. Yeah. According to who said that? I think Durham is. Yeah. I think with Genesis's dad, he can be both a badmiral and a dadmiral.
Do you think that badmiral dadmirals are also bad dads?
I think it depends. But of course, it depends is the textbook psychology answer for everything. I mean, the fact that we haven't met Genesis's dad yet, we haven't even heard his voice on a message or anything. I don't really know what to think about that. He's pretty much in the ether like Durham's parents are.
Well, who's a good dad is
who's
the
a good
doctor.
Dad? The doctor's an amazing dad, and the fact that Sam was calling him dad, my heart. Oh, my heart. Yeah.
And the doctor expressed some very clear concern about his daughter throughout this episode. Like, is Sam aboard? Where's Sam? What's happening with Sam?
Yeah, he was really worried about her. And when all this was happening, the kids got caught up, including Sam. And it was strange for me because they could tell that she was a photonic, because they said, if you try to blip out of here, we're going to shoot your friends when they get captured on the planet. So I'm not really sure what they were using to determine that she was photonic, but they called her out for it.
Yeah. But before they get captured, they are first in the little warehouse where they need to repair or recreate the missing part, the broken part from the shuttle. It surprised me that Caleb's mom didn't recognize it as a part for a Starfleet shuttle, a Federation shuttle.
Well, I remember she said something about it. She's like, these look like Federation parts. What is going on?
No, I don't think
was that somebody else?
It was the people who captured her who said that.
Oh, maybe. So yeah, I agree with you. That's very surprising if Caleb's mom didn't recognize it, especially because of how aware she is of Starfleet and the Federation because of what they did to her in the past. But looking at, maybe she was just in denial. Maybe she saw it and she didn't want to believe that Caleb had anything to do with the Federation because she had hated them for so long.
Or maybe she's just not very good at her job.
That's not a great management perspective.
There's that industrial organizational psychology again.
We may want to have a deeper conversation about this.
Oh?
Well, I mean, when there's problems with employees, one of the first things that a lot of leaders should be asking is not what is wrong with this employee, but what is this employee not getting that they may need to feel empowered. Maybe Caleb's mom, I mean, she was on a squandering planet. She obviously did not get the resources she needed to do a great job.
Okay, let me rephrase that then. Maybe the writers are not very good at their jobs.
That could be, but when was the last strike? There's a lot going on that we don't know about on the writer's table, I'm sure.
And we'll talk a little bit more about the editing of this series, but
yeah.
When they do get reunited, it becomes apparent that Caleb is going to leave and go with his mom. And this was his plan all along, and this seems to catch his Starfleet Academy friends by surprise. What did they think the plan was? What did you think the plan was, Stacy?
Not really sure. They pointed out that she's a Federation fugitive, and so of course, like she can't be seen with anybody that has to do with Starfleet. But when maybe the kids didn't realize because Caleb's not very upfront with context, let's just say. So maybe they didn't realize that she was a fugitive. Maybe they just thought Caleb's looking for his mom. Not, oh, Caleb's looking for his mom. And by the way, his mom broke out of a prison, a rehabilitation center 2 years ago at Braka, and she's been on the run ever since.
That's a good point. I don't think that information was shared outside of Caleb and Ake.
Yeah, and Tarima just a little bit. And even then, just with the creepy bear, he became all up in arms about it. So
Yeah.
I don't think that anybody knew about this.
Yeah. So just like how at the end of some movies, the kid throws rocks at the dog or the wolf to try to get him to go back to his home and says, I don't want you here.
Awful.
Caleb starts attacking his friends and he says awful things about Darum and Genesis. And he almost started saying something about Sam. And if he had, his character would have become irredeemable because you do not pick on Sam.
I think that is exactly why Sam's the one who stopped him. There are the different series that I've seen in the past, like, The Walking Dead or anything else, where it's like if once this threshold is breached, the character becomes irredeemable. Have turned a corner and it is very different. Whereas in this instance, to your point, I do think that it was a very clever move on both the writers and Sam's part for her to stop him and say, you're just full of whatever you're full of, and not let him say it, what he was wanting to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so they part ways. Caleb is going to go back with his mom, but then his Federation friends get captured and he goes to save them. And his mom, finding out that his friends are from Starfleet, goes to save them too. Why do you think she did that?
Because she just found her son. I think that is very simple because of the fact that Caleb cares about these people. Caleb's mom cares about Caleb. So by extension, she's going to help him. Now, when it comes to her shock value, I think that, she's tremendous. Like, as we can tell later on too, she's really surprised that Caleb has anything to do with the Federation, let alone being in Starfleet. But I think there was a certain amount of naivete or even just grace that was given to Caleb for having these friends that she was questioning in the warehouse. She was like, how do you know these people? Their fingernails are clean. Like, these are clean cut kids. They obviously don't belong here. To going from that to, okay, let's save them because Caleb cares about them as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. And also, she was responsible for the death of another Starfleet officer many years ago.
Yeah.
She was at first willing to let those 3 kids get assassinated, but once she found out that they were Starfleet, also Caleb's friends, which to your point is probably the more important factor here. But I think perhaps in addition to that, realizing that they were Starfleet and maybe her thinking, I can't let more Starfleet officers die on my watch.
Yeah, no, that really, I think that's really insightful too. She obviously felt a really big amount of remorse for this Starfleet officer who died, not just because she got punished for it, but because it happened. And so maybe this is her way of trying to make up for that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And yet, despite all that, they do end up back on the Athena. They rescue everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And even though Caleb and the mom were ready to go off on their own way, they end up right back under Admiral Ake's purview. And I kind of had forgotten up until this point the history behind Caleb's mom and Ake, because Ake has been on Caleb's side this whole time, helping him, advising him, etc. And I kind of forgot that she was the one who put Miss Muir behind bars in the first place. And the reunion of those 2 characters at the end of this episode where Ake just walks in and says, hello, Miss Muir. Wow, that really brought back to me everything that was at stake here.
Mm-hmm. You could tell, at least I could tell, by when Ake came into the room and she said, hello, Miss Muir, she addressed her the same way that she addressed her in the courtroom. way back at the beginning of the series. She called her Miss Mirror. She had that look on her face that, 16 years had gone by. And not only did Caleb's mom not forget that day, but it's just because of what happened with Caleb, but because of what happened with the mom. I do really like when Athena just drops down out of the clouds and just scoops the kids up and kind of flies away, and everybody's just dumbfounded on the ground. And, just that visual was really great. So, yeah, really good illustration there. And then also looking at, what we were talking about with Sam and her dad being the doctor. And Sam comes up to him and she said, she's so sorry. And he says, hush, don't ever do that again. There were times where I wish my dad would have said that to me. But I think that this also shows that, the doctor has compassion for Sam as well, because he knows that the only reason why she was in this situation in the first place was because she cared about her friends.
Yeah. And I do love as you said, the appearance of the Athena in atmosphere, very similar to how the Enterprise was in the Borg cube at the end of Picard season 3.
Yep.
And I too love that the Doctor has seemingly worked through the issues he had from Voyager's real life episode. He seems like he's still afraid of losing another daughter, so to speak, but I think he's more empowered to do something about it this time, because in real life he couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like that girl's fate was irreversible, whereas this time he was able to save Sam. And hopefully just that fact that he saved her helps him also recover from that trauma, to be like, oh, I do have agency here. There are things I can do. We can take risks and turn out okay, which is, of course, something Picard learned when he was in Starfleet Academy and got impaled by a Nausicaan, which Q gave him the opportunity to review in the TNG episode Tapestry. So, yeah, there can be good that comes from taking risks.
Yeah, definitely. I really like that perspective that you have where, after losing with the doctor, after losing his first daughter, he could have easily had a completely opposite reaction to saving Sam when Sam was saved and coming up to her and being like, you almost died. But he took this as an opportunity, possibly for some catharsis, for some self-healing. And that was really great. I do also think that, I really like how you pointed out, because I did, as you and I started talking about Star Trek itself, that was really my first exposure to it, was watching Picard on your suggestion and seeing the Enterprise and the Borg cube. I don't think that was necessarily a coincidence, because this episode was also directed by Jonathan Frakes.
Did he direct that episode of Picard as well?
I believe he did.
Huh. Let me double check that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
He did not.
He did not.
No.
Oh.
Yeah, he directed season 3, episodes 3 and 4 of Picard, but only those two.
Just those two. But he was in that episode in season 3. So.
Oh yeah, he was in like all the episodes of season 3.
Of course, because it's Riker.
We find out at the end of this episode, season 1, episode 9, that Noose Braka had purposely corralled everybody in and said he could use Omega 47 not as a weapon, but as a fence, basically, because he has mined the entire perimeter of Federation space, preventing any warp or impulse in or out, or even subspace communications, which strikes me as incredibly unlikely, because Federation space is about 8,000 cubic square feet. I'm sorry, that's not true. Let me try that again. Which strikes me as incredibly unlikely, because Starfleet Federation space is about 8,000 cubic light years. And I know that Federation, it's smaller in the 32nd century than it was before, because they're rebuilding after the burn. But still, the idea that Noose Braka could deploy that many mines without anybody noticing is where you tell me that it's a TV show and I should really just relax.
Oh, I didn't have to say it this time. No.
Yeah.
But there you have a really good point, because if you notice, the fence was just in a circle. It wasn't covering a cubic space.
Well, they kept referring to it as a ring, forgetting that space is three-dimensional and that it should be a sphere, not a ring.
Yeah. So I think that was one big oversight that even it even perked my ears with, like, oh, there's something that's going on here that probably wouldn't be going on. But then the other side of it is, how was he able to, like, did Braka just put this particle in a replicator and was like, all right, let's make all these bombs out of this? How did he? I don't think he scooped up that many bombs when he went to the station to get the Omega-47 in the first place.
They did mention that he stole both the Omega-47 and the mines, but how he got to replicate them so quickly and at such scale, and how he has a fleet of his own capable of deploying them on that scale.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like his terrorist organization is already bigger than the Federation. So what's the big worry?
Yeah. And if it's, the only other thing that I could think of is that he's getting some big help from the inside within Federation space. Because how can he get from one end to the other with a small fleet of terrorists and still accomplish those same goals? But I do think that when Braka shows up to the Athena as they're trying to get away from that world and they start attacking, you get this other visual aside from the mines, and you see those in space, but of the atrium detaching from the saucer on Athena. And so you see that, for me, I saw that as a representative of just how bare bones Braka was able to bring not just the Federation, not just Athena, but the whole Federation.
Yeah, it's quite the coup de grace that he was able to pull, if that's the right phrase. It probably isn't, to be able to deploy all these mines and just corral everybody in. I mean, like, I am currently living in a house. I can see out the front yard. I can see out the backyard. And if somebody started putting a fence around my yard, I would notice before they finished. And that's just one house.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless you have really cute pets that distract you, which you do. You just, haven't really seen them yet.
I have Stanley the cat, and I'm sure he's here somewhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that brings us to the end of this episode. And now, I had predicted that this would be a two-parter even before it started, and I was correct, because the next episode is called Rubincon, which I was initially very confused about the misspelling, because the saying is cross the Rubicon, not the Rubincon. There's no N. But we start off by examining this Omega-47 corral that Starfleet is in, that the Federation is in. They are able to have a brief 2-minute conversation with Admiral Vance, and they ask about the Discovery, USS Discovery, which I was very glad they addressed this, because Discovery is the only ship in the Federation that does not have a warp drive. Well, it does have a warp drive, but it also has what's called a spore drive that allows it to instantaneously go from any spot in space to any other without traversing the space in between. And so it is the fastest starship in the Federation. And so how come it couldn't leave this corral? And they said, well, the mines work in subspace and the spore drive goes through subspace, which isn't really true. But nonetheless, they're like, at least they acknowledged it. And even if the reason doesn't hold up, it would have been better. It's better than completely ignoring it. So I'm glad they said something.
Yeah, because I mean, for me, I wouldn't have paid any, I wouldn't have recognized that, oh, this is something that needed to be considered in the first place. So I do appreciate that they were at least trying to consider this for the sake of the fans who were aware of Discovery and the spore drive.
Especially since this is a spinoff of Discovery. We have Tig Notaro, we have Mary Weissman, we have Admiral Vance. These are all Discovery characters. And so a lot of us are like, how can we have Discovery characters and not acknowledge Discovery exists?
That's fair. Yeah. But, again, like for me, yes, I know it's a spinoff from Discovery because you've mentioned it. I don't do a lot of intentionally, I'm not doing a lot of research online to try and figure out like, oh, well, how is this connect or different things? Because I just find myself down Reddit rabbit holes and you'll never see me again. But looking at it from the surface level, you can see those connections, whereas I don't.
So the Athena tries to get away, but their shields are down, and Braka beams aboard with his crew, and he beams directly into the captain's chair, which I love the staging of.
Mm-hmm.
And then he walks around the screen he walks around the bridge like he's a stooge, like from the Three Stooges, making jokes and telling people, "Hey, that's funny. You should laugh." Nyuk, nyuk, nyuk. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
and rather than make him come across as a comedic character, it really just makes him come across as that much more unhinged and dangerous.
Which I honestly think that he is. I think that he has really gotten drunk on his own power and his own hatred that has kept him warm at night for so long. And he's just gone and gone off to this whole new level of power hungry and this type of megalomaniac sort of perspective, and thinks that he can't be, it feels like he's invincible. And so he can do and say whatever he wants.
Yeah, because he is in a position where that seems to be the case. Like he has a lot of supporting evidence that he is unstoppable. He has successfully corralled all of the Federation. There's one lonely ship. What can one ship do?
We find out.
We sure do. He leaves the ship and tells them to blow it up, and the Doctor adheres to the poetic advice of his captain before she departed, and he takes out what's called a mobile emitter. It is something that he's had for 1,000 years, which he mentions, and it gets absorbed briefly into the Athena's program and allows him to project holograms of the ship blowing up so that it looks like it's been destroyed, even though it actually hasn't. I am a little confused by this because the shields on the Athena had to be down in order for Braka to beam aboard in the first place. But then they say that the ship didn't blow up under the hologram because the shields took the brunt of the damage. So which is it? Were the shields down or were they not? Or did they get repaired enough to prevent a cataclysmic destruction of the ship in just the time that Braka was making jokes?
Yeah, that was one other thing, like how quickly was the Doctor able to, I don't know, patch this up when it came to the shields, or was he? And he, when he comes to Reno and he says, this has been in my pocket for almost 1,000 years, but the hologram is of the Athena. It's not a different ship. That's the hologram that's being blown up. So there's a lot of things again where it brings up those questions, but I do like the concept before we move on from this hologram and the ship and everything is the question of what makes a ship a ship. It's just this little bitty saucer that's detached from this huge atrium, but because it has the captain's chair in it and because it has these centralized controls, it's still considered the ship, even though it's just this little bitty saucer comparatively. So I like how even, there's the philosophical question of like, what makes a car a car? Is it the wheels? Is it the body? Is it the engine? But in this instance, what makes the Athena the Athena? Is it the wings? Is it the atrium? Or is it just that little bitty saucer that's in the middle?
So you're asking which part is the Athena?
Yeah, just to look at it that way. Would this be considered the Athena still if you look at the ship as it looks now at this point, just being a little saucer?
I think it is the Athena because later on they're looking for the rest of the ship and they say we've located the atrium. They don't say we've located the Athena.
That's true. Yeah. So the wings are not the Athena. It's just window dressing.
I suppose, yeah. But I do think, as far as the mobile emitter goes that you were asking about, holograms, as Sam has shown us, can appear to be anything.
That's fair.
And so the doctor was able to project whatever he wanted, whether or not it was himself, whether or not it was a different ship. In this case, it was the Athena that he was projecting.
Hmm.
I'm
And
just confused why the ship itself didn't blow up.
well, maybe it had to do with the doctor actually entering the computer himself. He became part of the ship for a little bit there because that's
And he
what
came out of it very confused.
yeah. And he came out, he was kind of glitchy like Sam was, and he's doing what we call word salad, where a person can think a certain thing, but when it comes out, it's just a big jumble of words. Um, and you even thought that this was a different type of language for a little while.
I thought he was speaking Temerian,
Yeah.
which we saw from a TNG episode, and there was a Temerian as a main character on Lower Decks. But no, it ended up just being what you said, word salad, which was he understood everything being said around him, and he would say words like, "But don't cross the river with the glue on your shoes." And that just didn't seem to make any sense. And it turned out that there was some sense to it. It just came out slightly wrong.
But the person who cracked it was Sam. She was the one that, or was it
Jaden.
Sam? Oh, excuse me. So yeah, I stand corrected. But Sam, I really like how Sam showed compassion for her dad. Like she could tell that he was struggling to say something, and instead of writing it off um, or getting angry at him, she really just tried to be patient.
Yeah, and that's a lesson for all of us as our parents get older and struggle with things.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's how I saw it. So many of us, especially around our age, is part of the sandwich generation. They're taking care of their elderly parents, and they're taking care of their kids, or in our case, in my case, aging pets as well. And so having that kind of patience is it as it shows here, it really does come out to be helpful. It just
Hmm.
takes a little bit more time.
I was surprised that the doctor was able to solve the problem of Omega 47 just from his brief time in the ship's computer, because Omega is a highly volatile substance, and it clearly was being developed at this starbase in a way that was not yet stable. And the
Hmm.
doctor solved that problem. He came out of the ship immediately saying, like, the glue on your shoes. And I don't understand how a medical doctor was able to solve that so quickly and at the time he did.
Maybe when he became part of the ship, he assimilated all that information from Starfleet itself that was hidden even in the computer archives that not really many people on the Athena would be able to access. Who
I,
knows?
I would think he would have been busy projecting all those holograms.
Uh, he's the doctor. He can do whatever he wants, and he has unlimited power. So he can do a lot of things. He is a multitasker by design.
I mean, him with a sonic screwdriver can do anything.
Yeah, exactly. He's
Yeah.
like MacGyver.
I did appreciate that we didn't get an intro sequence this week. The ship blew up and the word Starfleet Academy appeared.
That's it. That's all you get.
That was cool.
Yeah.
I liked it. All right. So from there, we have Reno still teaching, which is something that you pointed out.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that she's still teaching. She's like, you get a minus for hesitation, but you still get this kind of grade. She's like solid B plus. And even at the end, when she's giving them orders and they said, "I captain," and she goes, "I'm not a captain,"
Yeah.
so she's still holding on to this identity of being a teacher for these cadets. And in my mind, she's recognizing that these are still cadets. They need to be taught. You can't assume that they would know everything, which in a very stressful situation may not be the same perspective that a lot of people would have.
Yeah, even at one point when Caleb says, "Why are we doing this?" she asks, "Why do you think? Work it out." And he pauses and he reflects on his own question and he comes up with the answer.
Mm-hmm.
So she could have just as easily given him the answer. She could have just as easily, "Don't question my orders, just do them." But instead, even with like the fate of the entire Federation at risk, he's like, "Let's talk about this."
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
her.
Let's talk through this equation.
Mhm. And at one point, she has to step away from the bridge and she gives Genesis the chair.
Mm-hmm.
which we know from a previous episode, she'd always wanted to sit in a chair that wasn't just her father's.
Mm-hmm.
And she does. And what's the first thing she says?
She has to pee.
We never hear anybody on Star Trek talk about these essential biological functions until now. It was so nice to know that they actually do this in the future.
It's nice to know that even though human development and every other species development is hopefully heightened in 1,000 years, that people still get nervous when they are put in those powerful positions, because it makes me feel better because I get really nervous.
I have done so much community theater, and almost every time before I step on stage, I think to myself, I need to pee. Even though I just did 5 minutes earlier, I was like, crap, I'm about to go on stage in front of 100 people. I need to
Mhm.
pee. I need to pee.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very similar experience that I've had giving trainings to large groups of people, even if it's online when we were in the pandemic, and I see that number on Zoom getting to the 100s, 200s, and I'm like, I really need to go.
Yep. And so does Genesis.
And so does Genesis.
So we have Noose Braka. His big plan is to hold a trial in much the fashion that we do here in the 21st century. A
Hmm.
lot of Star Treks are known for their courtroom drama episodes. TNG had Drumhead and Measure of a Man. Strange New World Season 2 had one featuring Number One, which was an excellent episode. And we had one on Voyager where the Doctor petitioned to be a real boy, which is something he even mentioned in a previous episode of Starfleet Academy.
Hmm.
And now we have a trial for Starfleet Academy, season 1, episode 10. They snuck it in under the wire.
Yeah.
News Braka puts Starfleet on trial with Ake as the proxy and Miss Muir, Anisha, serving as basically the jury.
Yeah, the judge and the jury is what he was saying. And this whole Law and Order Starfleet edition is is it's very interesting to watch, because you see, especially what we were just talking about with the end of the last episode, where Anisha and Nahla, they see each other, and you see that tension. You feel that tension that they have. And now Anish, now Mir is essentially going to be the fate for Ake. And um right before that, Ake hugs Mir and is like just thinking about how hard that must have been, because Ake needed to tell Mir something. She needed to tell her that Caleb was still alive, and now she's becoming the prosecutor for this.
Yeah, there are a couple of things that didn't make sense for me there. One is she says, Caleb is alive. We have a plan, but we never really find out what the plan is, as far as I know. Do you know if we found out what the plan is, Cadet Stacy?
The plan that I would think of that Ake is aware of is letting Anisha know that Caleb is alive, because Ake is the one who gave the doctor the coded message to run this holographic program.
But beyond that, there's no plan. Like Ake didn't know there was going to be a trial. She didn't tell the doctor or anybody on the Athena what to do after avoiding being exploded. Like there, as far as I know, there's no plan.
I Do you think that not getting exploded is enough of a plan?
No.
Oh, well then I stand corrected. I think that Ake Ake was she trusts these kids. So maybe she was just telling Anisha, like, we have a plan, but her only plan was to trust the kids, was to trust the cadets. But she was trying to reassure Anisha.
It's possible, but it also confuses me that News Braka seemed to suggest multiple times in this episode that Caleb was dead. But when he scanned the Athena, he didn't find any kids because they were hiding in that airlock with the air pressure dropped to a certain point where it inflicts a bug on the software and allows them to go undetected. So he didn't know Caleb was on the ship when he thought he blew it up. So
Mm-hmm.
why is he saying Caleb is dead when the last time he saw Caleb was like episodes ago?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it's a little confusing.
I mean, Caleb's always putting himself in danger, so he could be dead at any time.
Odds are, right?
Yeah.
Those darn kids.
Those darn kids.
Always running around and getting themselves killed. Honestly. One thing I liked about the trial was the chyron or news ticker at the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
There were the only two I noticed were one was New Kronos, which is the new homeworld of the Klingons, had offered to sign a non-aggression pact with this terrorist group.
Huh.
And also one of Vance's aides had produced an expose saying that Vance is pure evil.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's the Minari Raw News Network. Can we really trust what they're saying?
No.
Yeah. So who knows? I mean, we're very familiar with news outlets who just make stuff up because it causes sensationalism. And so maybe rage bait is still alive and well 1,000 years from now.
They still have algorithms that prioritize engagement 1,000 years in the future. That's the darkest timeline.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, poor Newstifer was talking about how his, part of all this that was going on when he was boisterously talking about why he's doing this kind of trial was he talks about his dad and how he would see shuttles going past that were owned by the Federation and wouldn't help them at all. And we, come to find out that this is just he is just a wounded little boy, and he is still, just like what we've had conversations about our dads in the past. He has this connection to his dad that he hasn't been able to let go of yet.
Yeah, he still blames the Federation for what happened to him as a kid. And he apparently was never incentivized to fact check his interpretation of the events because he finds out that the destruction that was rained upon his village was not Starfleet exacting revenge. It was his dad taking a calculated risk and miscalculating.
Yeah, the strontium, when he was talking about how it burns red, like Ake, come to find out that Ake asks Caleb, and we find out later on that Caleb finds his way onto the atrium and says, from your exochemistry class, like 101, what does this, when it burns, what does it show up as? And it shows up as red. And we find out, oh gosh, Braka's dad, it was all him the whole time.
Yeah. And before we get to that climactic moment, there are a couple other points I want to bring up, which is at one point, Caleb and Reno are in what looks like that same airlock again. And Caleb says how he feels like a screw up. He still feels like a 6-year-old kid. He feels like a little kid, just like Braka does. And they both just missed their parents, which was really heartrending.
Yeah. And Caleb says that, when Reno tries to reassure him, like, you stuck around for your friends. And he said that, anybody would have done the same thing. And she corrects him. She says, no, not everybody would have done the same thing. I love how she said, I asked you who you were when in an earlier episode in that class, you just told me. And I thought that was really poignant. And it really, you could see Caleb kind of realizing, oh, I'm not all bad. I'm, in a 6-year-old mind, you only think in terms of, it's binary. It's just zeros and ones. Either something is good or something is bad. And he's still thinking of himself in that 6-year-old mind.
Yeah, and it takes her saying, hey, I can speak from experience. I've totaled 3 shuttles. It's not easy, but I did it.
Go, Reno. She had a gift.
Yeah. And just her empathy and her patience. I mean, she comes across as such a smartass, but the reason she's able to be such a smartass is because she sees people for who they really are, including herself.
Right. Yeah. She sees her own limitations, and she also sees the kind of hopes as well, which I think this really emphasizes why she and Laura make such a great couple.
Why is that?
Because she's able to see Laura for who Laura is, not just how she appears or how she presents. Reno is able to see what's behind that, not as an excuse, but Laura really she wants to lean into her heritage, which is inherently aggressive, and so being able to own her heritage but also being seen as a person worthy of respect and love and an individual. So I could see that. I could see Reno being a good fit for somebody who can understand that.
Yeah, she's willing to look people right in the eye. Somebody who isn't willing to do that is Anisha Mir. During the trial,
yeah.
she avoided a lot of contact with Ake, even as Mir, is talking. She had a lot to get off her chest, but she couldn't look at Ake until the very end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Anisha is really angry at Ake. And she even says to Ake at one point, you spent all this time looking for my son. Why didn't you try to find me? Why didn't you try to find the person that you condemned to this rehabilitation center? And I had mixed feelings about that, because Anisha and Ake, they had this common bond. We're both trying to find Caleb. But then Anisha kind of makes it about herself, which I can understand why, but I don't necessarily think that it makes the point that it's trying to make with her saying that, as opposed to distracting Ake from that centralized connection. Mir's trying to separate herself from Ake, which we find out later on why with the verdict. But I think that Anisha Mir saying, "Why didn't you find me?" I found that a little self-serving for herself. And maybe she was just trying to grasp at straws to make herself feel like she was not similar to Ake. That could have been it.
Or maybe she was trying to ignore her own sins, which Ake brought up about the Hawaiian Federation officer.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ake knew this person. This was a real person, and he had his own quirks, and he had his own culture, and he had his own kid. Yeah, he had his own kid who would wear their hair like he did. And Ake knew this person, personally knew this person. And so thinking back to that first episode where Ake was saying an officer died, like it wasn't just an officer, it was an officer she knew. And the amount of compartmentalization that Ake needed to do to not make it personal to her, but Anisha does. Anisha makes it personal to herself.
You know what I think would have been a really interesting reveal right there, which I knew wasn't going to happen because they'd already contradicted it earlier in the series, was if the officer that Anisha Mir had killed had been Ake's son.
For a split second, I thought that was it. You're not alone. When Ake admitted that she knew who the officer was, and the officer was somebody that she felt for, I was like, oh God, don't let it be her son. That would have been too much for me.
But it would have made it very interesting for Ake to then take Mir's son and try to raise him, almost as if you took my son from me, I'm taking your son from you. It would have.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a couple of different ways to spin that. The way I just said it is very dark, but also could have been like, I lost my son. I know what that's like. I didn't want you to have to go through that, which is why I took your son under my wing to make sure nothing happened to him.
Right. Yeah. That kind of redeeming quality. So the intention being, I'm trying to save your son by taking him under my wing, as opposed to I'm trying to take your son.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And speaking of her son, Anisha Mir's son, Caleb, does ultimately trust Tarima to enter his mind and use that connection to try to find Anisha.
Mm-hmm.
I love how it tied back into the whales that they saw earlier in the season.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, when Tarima gives the coordinates and Darum scans and says, I found the atrium, the whole reason that they were using Tarima is because long-range sensors were down. So
Yeah.
even if you know what direction to go in, how did Darum know the atrium was there? What was he scanning for with the long-range sensors that weren't working?
These two episodes have a lot of holes in them, and so I don't blame you for getting frustrated. I can even see the frustration on your face, and I totally understand that. I I think that, you know, I don't know if it was because they were trying to get these episodes out. This is where I'm like speaking in terms of like the writers and uh, everybody outside of being in this world of Star Trek, Starfleet. But it does seem like these two episodes were there was so much CGI. You could tell that there was a lot of money that was spent on these two episodes, but the storyline itself was really lacking. And so I don't know, was it rushed at certain points? So I'm not really sure.
Similarly, when Sam and Genesis were speaking a made-up language,
Mm-hmm.
supposedly this is something that they shared as roommates, which feels like something we should know from a previous episode, but I don't remember this coming up.
Oh, I do actually. In the first episode, Sam is trying to talk to everybody. She's trying to introduce herself to random Starfleet cadets, and she says greetings in this language. And Genesis responds to her. That's how they got connected.
But Jaden said, you two are talking in a language that makes no sense, like it was all
Uh-huh.
made up between them. So how could Sam have said something that Genesis replied to if it's something that the two of them made up when they became roommates?
Maybe it was the statement that was made about it doesn't make any sense was simply because it's a dead language. Maybe it's like speaking Latin to each other and somebody saying, well, that just doesn't make any sense. But
I don't, that,
I'm not sure.
yeah, I'm not sure that's something that Jaden would say, that just because he doesn't know the language, it makes no sense.
I mean, I wouldn't think that Jaden would say that, but that was the impression that I got was that they were talking in the uh that foreign language that had been dead for what 400 years or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember a language that was dead for 400 years. Maybe I need to go rewatch something earlier in the season, but this is not something that I have any recollection of.
Mm.
Hmm.
Maybe I made it up. Who knows?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Possibilities are endless.
Brief aside, every Star Trek captain has their own way of saying, let's go to warp. Like Picard says, engage.
Mm-hmm.
Pike says, hit it.
Mm-hmm.
Burnham says, let's fly. And Reno says, now show me pretty streaks of light.
Yes. And I've never caught Ake saying something yet. So the first time that we hear anybody talking about a specific phrase that's used for warp is Reno, but she's not a captain. She's very adamant about not being a captain.
There's an article here on screenrant.com that says Star Trek just had its best captain catchphrase since Picard's engage. And they're talking about Reno, of course.
Uh-huh.
It sounds like, yeah, this article says that Ake doesn't really have her own yet. Okay, so now we can circle back. We've gotten to the end of the episode, and this is where the truth of News Braka's childhood comes to light, and all his supporters start turning off their holograms as if to show that they are no longer supporting him. And
Mm-hmm.
he has a Thanos moment where he goes to snap his fingers and click the button and completely and permanently corral the Federation by igniting the Omega 47 mines. And just at that moment, Sam finishes making her pineapple cake, and Caleb's signal intercepts, and Genesis and everybody else all has a different role to play. And they are able to intercept and stabilize the mines. And immediately, all of Starfleet, except for Discovery, warp in, and they are there to surround them and capture them and bring them to justice. And both Ake and Mir, these two little women, are allowed to get their punches in while Braka is held.
Well, first things first, I wouldn't call them little women.
Well, not in like the book sense of the word, but there was one moment where Ake was standing next to somebody. It may have been Caleb in this episode, and the height difference was really like I always knew she was short, but it really brought home in that shot just how short she is.
Yeah, it really does. But she, that really shows just how much, how strong she is, both physically and mentally, because she really just smacks the crap out of him, which he deserves more than that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
He even says, "Oh, that didn't hurt," and then he spits out a tooth.
Yeah.
So that is pretty much the end of the season. They have a little wrap up at the end. Everybody's back at the Athena. They're going off for the summer. They're coming back. But in general, that is the end of season 1 of Starfleet Academy.
And it also ends with Rufus Wainwright singing a song.
Just like when they arrived on Earth in the first episode.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Cadet Lee, what did you think of the first season of Starfleet Academy?
I thought that there were, again, at the very end, there were definite plot holes. But I think that if we're focusing so much on the psychology and the dynamic between all the characters, it's a really solid story to be told. And it really did give me an opportunity to find out more about Star Trek universe in this contained way that I hope was reassuring to other people as well, that you're never too old to really become a Star Trek fan. And so I was really looking forward to slowly diving into the Star Trek universe, being this novice that the last thing I watched Star Trek wise was with my dad. So hadn't seen anything in 13 years, and watching this series and watching the season of the series, I'm looking forward to next season.
Me too. I really liked this show. I felt like every character got their episode. So Jaden had an episode, Sam had an episode, et cetera, et cetera. I thought I was going into a show where Caleb was going to be the main character, but in some ways he was, but it was much more balanced in a good way. Discovery was not as good at that. The show was very much about Michael Burnham, and there were all these characters on the bridge that we never really got to know very well until it was too late, if at all. So I really like that they were a little bit more personal with their cast in Starfleet Academy. And having each person have their own episode just made it all the more impactful when it became an ensemble show in the final episode, the final 2 episodes. Like, we know where Sam is coming from. We know where Jaden is coming from. We know where Tarima is coming from, because they all had their moments in the spotlight before they had to share the stage.
Yeah, we know what each of their core fears are, and we also know what, like at the end of this episode where it shows the real actors, and it has their hopes and dreams, but their hopes and dreams are tied in with the series, which I thought was really clever. We get to see what their hopes and dreams are, and they make sense to us because we've seen these stories of the other characters.
And we find out that Admiral Vance was called Vancy Pants.
Vancy Pants, my man Charlie.
I will share a criticism to a lighter degree than our friend Sabriel has, because I chatted with her about this, which is it feels like sometimes the show was rushed and they had to edit or cut things that resulted in other things not making sense. I felt like that was very true in the last 2 episodes. I didn't see it as much previously to that. Sabriel did see it more often. Maybe I know she likes to watch episodes more than once, so she probably saw some things that I overlooked. But I do feel like there were times, not too many, but there were times when they were trying to tell a 90-minute story in 60 minutes.
Yeah, and we had talked about this before where, you don't get the nuances of a 28 or more episode season where Data's asking Worf to watch his cat and stuff. We have to try to cram so much into 10 episodes. And I really appreciate both yours and Sabriel's perspective on this, because I could really see that. We're trying to learn so much in such a short amount of time that it really sacrifices a lot of the things that don't end up making sense, and then I get stuck on them instead of focusing on the big picture, because the big picture's been so compromised by these time constraints.
Somebody pointed out that even when you add up like multiple seasons of modern Star Trek, what some people call new Trek, even multiple seasons can equal just one season of old Star Trek, because it used to be, as you said, so many more episodes long. We still got a lot of that this season. I feel like we got to, as I said, to know a lot of the characters in ways that we did in Discovery. But it's not just the getting to know the characters, it's also the actual plot elements that I feel were sometimes cut that could have been brought up sooner, could have been reinforced, could have been clarified. This goes back to the conversation you and I had in the very first episode of this season of the podcast, which is, what is the burn?
What's up with that? Yeah.
Right. Like, I know that because I saw Discovery, but I had to explain it to you. And somebody who didn't watch Discovery, who goes into season 1 of Starfleet Academy, is just left to know that there was this ominous event that happened in Starfleet's history, and it had a negative effect on the next 140 years or so.
Yeah.
But what was it? It was that all the dilithium exploded and stranded all the Starfleet officers and ships and killed billions or millions of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why couldn't they have just said that?
You were just talking about New Trek and how New Trek, all of the series and all of the seasons can be collected into the same amount of episodes that old Trek could be. So is the intention behind this, knowing that it's a Discovery spinoff and everything else, is the intention behind this that it would be treated as, that Starfleet Academy would be treated as just a part of the whole season being comprised of New Trek? Am I expected to go back and look at and watch all the New Trek to be able to catch up with this, and they're not going to explain it?
I would hope not, because Starfleet Academy, as I hope you've experienced, has been such a great entry point for new fans.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, like you don't like, there was an entire episode about a DS9 character. There was an episode about the Doctor recovering from trauma from a Voyager episode. And if you've been watching Star Trek since the 80s and 90s, then great, but it shouldn't be expected that you do. Like, I read somewhere recently that I think season 4 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, or maybe season 5, is going to be the 1000th episode of Star Trek. Like, that's just too much for any one person. That's more Star Trek than Stargate.
Yeah. And Star Wars and Star Man.
That was a TV show. That was a TV show. Yeah,
it was.
It had what's the guy from Airplane, which you and I just saw, the main character, the actor.
Robert Stack? No, that's not him. Leslie Nielsen.
No, Robert. You had the name Robert Hayes.
Oh, Robert Hayes. Oh, well, I mean, as we've established before, faces I get, names not so much. So yeah, but the other part of it is that you brought up a really good point. That's the reason why I wasn't into Star Trek for so long, because I was just way too intimidated, and I wasn't the only one. I've talked to other friends who have said the same thing. Oh, I want to get into Star Trek, but I feel like there's almost 1,000 episodes. That's just it's like drinking from a fire hose. There's just way too many. So not getting involved in it at all is easier than trying to catch up with all the things that had happened. And in certain instances, like, what's the burn? If if the writers or the creators are expecting me to go back and watch Discovery right now to find out what the burn is, well, then what about the series before that? What about the season before that? So it can easily get intimidating. And I just want to watch the pretty ship flying around and people having issues. Like, that's what I want to see sometimes.
You want to see pretty streaks of light and people with issues.
Pretty streaks of light, and hopefully to bring back tube socks, according to Ake and her hopes and dreams.
Oh, I missed that part. That is a reasonable hope for 1,000 years in the future.
Yes, I can appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, we're just about at the end of this season of not just Starfleet Academy, but also Transporter Lock. I will say that we have Strange New Worlds Season 4 and Starfleet Academy Season 2 are both wrapped. They've already shot them. We're probably going to get Strange New Worlds Season 4 this year, Starfleet Academy Season 2 next year. Right now, for the first time in 9 years, there is no new Star Trek in production.
What's up with that?
Yeah. So I think they may have actually already shot season 5 of Strange New Worlds, so that might already be in the can as well. But it's a little scary that there's nothing new being developed, because there's always been they've started production, they've wrapped production, they've wrapped post-production. The show is scheduled ever since Discovery debuted in 2017. We've almost 10 years ago. We've always had something to look forward to. So there is new Star Trek to look forward to, but we are seeing the end of the road. But
maybe this year will give me the opportunity to actually see new Trek after all.
That's right, because even if there's no new Star Trek in production, there's 1,000 episodes of old Trek.
That's not intimidating at all.
It shouldn't be intimidating. It should be hopeful and encouraging that there will always be Star Trek for you to watch if you want it.
And but I will need some guidance as to where to start.
Well, your chief engineer is always happy and willing to serve as your guide.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
You're quite welcome. And I hope that we'll see you back on Transporter Lock.
Yeah, me too. It was really fun.
I agree. Until then,
make sure your Tardaxian furfly doesn't find its way into the replicator.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on iTunes and keep your hailing frequencies open by following us on Twitter @TransporterLock or subscribing to our podcast and email newsletter at transporterlock.com.
When I was going to tech school, so I went to a 2-year school and before I went to undergrad, and we had a speech class, and the assignment was to outline, to say out loud what the steps of a process were. So you're describing the steps of a process in your speech project. Mine was making pineapple upside down cake. And I thought, what better way to show, to get a good grade on this and to also have it be a hit at the end than to make a pineapple upside down cake and showing it flipping upside down and ta-da, there's the pineapple upside down cake, that's the last step, and then serving it to everybody. Because, it's pineapple upside down cake. Who doesn't love that? Well, I didn't think about the fact that when I baked the cake, I refrigerated it up right side up so that I could put it upside down during my speech. Well, part of the reason why you have to turn it upside down when the pan is hot is because everything will congeal and dry against the bottom of the pan, which I didn't think of. And so I do my whole speech, I get to the very end, and I go to flip the pineapple upside down cake, and it doesn't flip because it's stuck to the bottom of the pan. So it tasted just as good, because I used to make really good pineapple upside down cakes. I'm not going to, I'm just saying. But I had to serve it up, I had to really just scrape it off and serve it to everybody that way. So I got a B on this project instead of an A. It was a pineapple right side up cake, and it was awesome. The end. That's the end of my story.